Best Irish music on irishradio.org with Jerry Byrne.
I'm Jerry Byrne, it's irishradio.org. I've been speaking all over the lockdown since COVID hit us with so many great talents in music, of singers, musicians, songwriters and entertainers. And a gentleman I've got now is undoubtedly one of the legends and one of the longest professional musicians in the Irish music scene. It all began full-time musician in 1957. It's hard to believe. I'm delighted to say hello to a native of Roscommon who is resident in Galway, the one and only Johnny Carroll. Johnny, how are you?
I'm very well, Jerry. You've done your homework, Jerry, so you have. a lot of people say from Galway that I get some stick from the Roscommon people. He says he's really Roscommon, but however,
yeah, but fair.
I'm a blow in Galway. I'm a Galway here for the last 40 years.
Right,
it's a great city.
yes. Johnny, listen, you started off at I know there was at a very young age, but boy, it's a long time ago.
Jerry, I started with the very famous showman who became famous in the 60s. With the premier races from Roscommon, Castlereagh, and Trevor. I was only 13 and a half years of age when I joined the band, and the guys in the band weren't much older than they were well into the teens at the time. So it was a bit of fun, but it just started, and we became very, very popular, and we became so popular that it was very difficult for me to give up the business, because we were travelling and touring, so I just loved it, and I was very fortunate to stick with it and make a living out of it for the last 63 years. I've never done anything else. I've been professional for the last 63 years, and I was still working up until the COVID there in March. Not that much, doing some tours, some concerts, but I was still working, but that's all gone for me now. But I've been there wearing the T-shirt, so thankfully I was there when things were good, and they'll be good again.
Indeed so. But Johnny, you were the premier races were they had a huge name amongst musicians as incredibly talented people, and they were actually one of the forerunners really of the show bands.
We were, and I have to say, I mean, we were. I always say, Jerry, there were, as you possibly well know, there was about 600 or 700 show bands in Ireland right through the 60s. But at the end of the day, there'd be only about 20 top show bands, in the top 20, the really big bands are playing the big bars. And thankfully, we were one of the bands at the time, because we went to England for all the Burns circuit, which was Cricklewood and Kilburn and New Cross and Manchester and, all them places. We're very fortunate to get with them. And we played all the associated ballrooms here on the Reynolds chain and all that. So we were very fortunate to be playing the big halls. But we had a good manager, and then we were fortunate enough to get the services a singer from England, very popular man, and a lovely gentleman, but he's died since the Lord rest him, was Houston Wells.
Yes, one of the all-time legends.
And Houston had a big hit in England before he joined us with a number called Only the Heartache. You probably remember it.
I do indeed, yes.
So it just took off for us, and we toured. We're all over the place. But we're in the top 20 for 10 or 15 years. 12 or 15 years, I'd say at least, so we did a lot of work anyway, all over the place.
Certainly did. And
all over Ireland.
You had 8 members.
Correct. 78 members. Well, you see, Jer, the show bands always had to have a brass section. Trumpet, trombone, or maybe trumpet and 2 tenor saxes, or maybe. So we all. And I think what the brass section at that time would now be taking the place of what the keyboard players are doing now. The sound. So the brass always took the lead with it, where there might be keyboard or strings or something. So that I suppose that was one of the things about the show was if you had a good brass section, you'd always have a good dancing beat, a punchy beat. And we had 3 brass sections in our with 2 tenor saxes and me on trumpet. But I mean, all the bands at the time would have a 3-piece brass section. All of the band.
Indeed.
And just so unusual, I mean, you could be doing a rock and roll song with guitars and keyboards and all that, but still the brass was punching there all the time. And I think that was one of the secrets of the show, was being a great. There were great bands to dance to. There's a great punch, great dance beat.
Yes. Yes, they certainly did. I mean, it was the truly amazing thing back then. You had a band like 7-8 piece band, and I mean the PA systems were just minuscule.
Oh my God, don't talk to me about it. I mean, a 7 and 8 piece band, and then you would leave Castlereagh and Roscommon, you'd drive to Kerry or Cork, which would be 150, 160 mile away, in a bad wagon. You play maybe 9 to 1 or 9 to 2 in the Marquee dance hall. I mean, 4 or 5 hours you're in relief bands playing to 1,000, 1,200 people and sweating and drive home again the following night. But the PA system, I mean, but the thing about all they had that too, all we had at the very beginning was 2 little small speakers and a little Dynacord amp. Then we come up in the world. We bought two Dynacord speakers, crazy boxes from the great Joe O'Neill and Glenamady, and a stronger amplifier. I wouldn't be big into the amplifiers at the time. I didn't know much about them. The boss of the band would know that. But you'd have 12 or 1,500 people in the Marquee, and two Joe O'Neill crazy boxes. But nobody ever complained. No such thing as micing up either, Jerry. Yes. And you'd be very, very lucky to have a monitor. Like one monitor on the front of the stage, there's no such thing as a monitor for the drums or for anybody else. You just winged it. But everybody danced and everybody was happy, and I've seen them, I've seen crowds just standing, 12 or 1,500 people just standing in a dance hall when some of the bands would do some of the big numbers, and you'd hear a pin drop. It's amazing too what we got away with at the time, but nobody seemed to complain, and the dancers were happy and the bands were happy.
Indeed, it just shows
Incredible.
you. Yeah, it is. Well, I've heard stories, Johnny, of 50 watt amps and 100 watt amps, and that it was, that if it went to 200 watt amp like that was flipping big stuff, and it just in today's terms.
Oh yeah, and Jerry, I would have known. I still do know some members of the Royal Showburn, Brenda Byrne, the Royal, when they started at the beginning, and. I know Eddie Sullivan, a great friend of mine. He's a trumpet player. Eddie and I meet up quite often. He comes up from Waterford and stays with me here for a couple of days. But Eddie will tell you maybe when they started at the very beginning, like they might go to a hall in Mayo or Cork or wherever it may be, a remote parochial hall. And if electricity went, what they had to do was to go out to the van, take in the battery, and yoke up the old Vortexian amp to the battery and try and play it through that for 4 hours.
Wow.
And if that battery went, you went to another car and took another battery. If the charge went into it, and that's the truth.
Yes.
And then that was bad enough, Jerry. But then you had to jump into a wagon in Belmullet or Castlebar and drive back to Waterford. 7 or 8 guys, no roadies, no nothing. Tough times. But I always said, if you didn't enjoy what you're doing, you would never do it.
That's for sure.
People really had to enjoy what they were at.
Indeed, that is for sure. Now, listen. Later on, you after the Premier races, you were with the Magic and the Magic Band.
Yeah, well, just like everything else, the thing about the Premier races, and just getting back to your original point, I think one of the reasons that my parents allowed me to stay on the road, because they knew I just loved what I was doing at the time, and they allowed me to join them at a very young age, which I did, which was only a bit of fun anyway. We didn't think it was going to take off. It's the fact that all the Premier races at the very beginning, Jerry, they're all pioneers. None of the boys rank. We're all teetotallers, which was great, and that was great for me. And it was great for us right through the heydays, because for 12 or something years there, like, we were all pioneers. None of us took to the whole alcohol. If we do, we mightn't have lasted as long as we did. You know yourself, when you get into a tight places in the van or a car with 7 or 8 guys and personalities clashing. So with the fact that we was taking the drink at the time, it helped us to, even though personalities would still clash, it helped us to stay together longer than maybe most bands would have had. But we were. Your question there was, what did you say? I got to go.
You after the Premier races, Dave, was it?
After the Premier races, yeah. What happened? Yeah. We just, a few of us decided it was time for a change, because Houston had left, and then we were joined in by another very popular singer at the time. He was the country singer with the Royal Blues, Doc Carroll and the Royal Blues. His name was Shea O'Hara, and Shea was a fine guy. And then Shea decided to immigrate to America, and after that, then 3 or 4 of us in the band decided to, just to do something new. So we started a band. We started a band called Murphy and the Swallows, which was managed by a great friend of ours, Noel Carty from Dublin. Noel managed Brendan Shine and Johnny McAvoy and a lot of big bands. So Noel managed us for a few years. Then we changed that, and we started a band called Magic and the Magic Band. And he was the guy who lit up suit. So sort of semi-pop band and country band at the time. You do lit up suit. We're doing a good bit of pop, when they say pop, the commercial pop at the time. And that went on for years. And I suppose, Noel Carty manages that band for years. Now he's the band leader. Then I think I took over the band completely, and I ran it for some years. But I think, Jerry, at that particular time, things were getting tight in the ballroom circuit when you had a 7 or 8 piece band, and ballrooms weren't doing the business that they had done for many, many years, and things were getting tight, and you had a 7 or 8 piece band to pay. So I remember going home one night from a gig above and somewhere up in Donegal with 7 or 8 guys in the back of the band and very little money after. So I said, what am I going to do to try and make a living? Because I said, I hadn't done anything else in my lifetime except the music, and I didn't want to, actually it was too late in life to start another career. So I just thought of doing something for myself, if I could just do something with my trumpet, and which is a hard thing to do. And then I just think driving the wagon home, I thought about Mr. Rackerberg had a hit going back with Stranger on the Shore, and before that, the great Eddie Calvert, the original man with the golden trumpet. And Phil Coulter happened to have an album out at the time called Tranquility. I just thought to myself, my God, I wonder if I recorded something on the trumpet, would it go? And I got this idea, so I went around and made a few demos, and people laughed at me. So I went to Donny Cassidy, and I had Donny in Castle Pollard, the great Donny, and Donny took me on with CMR Records and Harmark Records, and we went into Dublin. He put everything behind us, Windmill Studios and all the top session musicians, and we recorded Touch of Class, and I never looked back after that, thankfully.
Indeed, I remember that album coming out well. Would I be correct in saying that wasn't the Harmark record label?
You're right. Harmark took out. Donny did a deal with Harmark Records. Harmark, yeah. They were a very, very big record label in Ireland at the time. But they went at that time, which was most unusual. They went television with that in England and Ireland, which was great for me, because, to be quite honest, Jerry, I couldn't be able to afford to do the cover of the album. They had all the money behind the album, and it was just a winning format, I suppose. I started recording. I come up with the format of recording little medleys, well-known medleys together, like an Irish medley or well-known Irish tunes, to put them in three in one, And I found in that when I think Val Joyce, the great Val Joyce in RT at the time, he had a show called Airs and Race of an RT radio on a Saturday. He was the very first man to play a track from my Twitch of Class album, and my God, people started requesting it. And after that, everybody started playing, thankfully. But I have to say one thing about the album, and fair play to the record company, Harmark and Johnny Carroll. They had the top production there, top session top production, top producer, the whole lot, which was fantastic. It was great. It was very, very well produced, and it was a seller. And I said what sold most records for us for that Touch of Class, Jerry, was at the time. Bed and breakfast at the time, hotels would have it on in the dining room in the morning. I got so many calls from ladies with B&Bs all over the country, wondering where could they get, because tapes that time mostly. And the lady would have the tape on while the people were having their breakfast, and someone would say, what's that? And they'd say, oh, that's nice. Where's that? Who is that? Oh, that's your man. So they went to the shop and looked for the tapes. So I saw a lot of tapes through bed and breakfast and hotels at the time for background music. And then we hit on the format, and I've recorded 12 albums since, so doing the same thing. Medleys and easy listening. Listening.
Amazing. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. But the other thing about it, Johnny, was that back in the day, the trumpet wasn't really featured. I mean, even the great Billy McFarland, who possibly known more as a singer, but back then Billy really wasn't doing a lot with the trumpet. He was doing more singing at that time. So there was nobody with a trumpet.
I know Billy for years. A lovely, lovely man up in the north of Ireland. I've worked with him many, many times. But you see, Jerry, I have to say, I pioneered all this, because I'll tell you why. Like, nobody knows how difficult it was for me to get a record deal with a record company. Because I remember very, very well, and I did the demos and people laughed, you're a singer. No, I wasn't singing very much at the time. Fortunately enough, I started singing quite a lot after that, because I needed it for my show, because I was doing sort of a show band thing. But, if you weren't a singer, a trumpet player, but who wants to listen to a trumpet all night? But there weren't listening to the trumpet all night, because I didn't have one or two singers with me in my little group. But it was to sell yourself as a trumpet player, which was very, very difficult. I mean, I recorded Oh My Papa, and I'm the only one ever in this country to take a trumpet instrumental into the Irish chart. It was number one that Irish chart for about 5 or 6 weeks with that. And I know no one has achieved that since, and no one has recorded a hit record or a hit single for the Irish chart except that Oh My Papa. And the amazing thing about it is that to this day, Jerry, no matter what concert I do, if I should have missed it for whatever reason, someone come up at the end of the night, disappointed, what happened? You didn't do it tonight. It's amazing after all the years.
Yes.
But yeah, it was very hard to sell myself, but I worked at it, and Johnny worked it. But I suppose the television at the time sold it for me. The boys spent a lot of money in television ads, and as I said earlier on, the production of the albums was very well produced with the RT strings and choruses and all that. Very well.
Indeed.
They didn't spare the money. I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So the best of luck to them.
Indeed, but the thing about it was completely and totally. You were the first to do it. It was the first album of trumpet music, probably, that was
correct,
almost ever released by any Irish artist.
Correct.
So
yes, and I'm still releasing them. I've 12 of them out. I've done it, and I suppose. And you see, the other thing about it, Jerry, that even at my age now, after 63 years in the business, I still have the youngsters all the time. Like speaking to you tonight, I have a single out there called "Come Dancing," and I talk to people on radio stations, and I still have as much interest in the business today as I had 40 years ago. And I suppose, well, out of necessity, Jerry, when Touch of Class came out, I promoted myself as much as I could and went out and got the work and did the radio stations because I had a young family and a mortgage, so I had to work. If the week it didn't work, there's nothing coming in. So I really worked hard at it, and it paid off, and I still get as much enjoyment out of it today as I did then.
Absolutely,
but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy trying to get it off the ground, I'll tell you, as a trumpet player.
I would say that, yeah. Well, I mean, nobody had, as regards the idea of a guy on a trumpet recording an album, it hadn't been done. Nobody ever sort of had heard of it. Nobody. It was a completely new dimension. But I mean, the thing was that was the very obvious thing that actually made it such a commercial success, because nobody else had done it. It was done well and it sounded good. And
yes, and the other thing is also, Jerry. See, it's like have a successful band, dance band or show band, whatever it may be. Your repertoire is very, very important. You could have the best trumpet player in the world, or maybe taking out an album, but if it hasn't the right format, it hasn't something that people, it clicks to the public, you're wasting your time. And I was very fortunate to pick the right numbers. You know what I mean, like the Tennessee Waltz and Candy Stone, the Corn Little Medleys, and the Fields of Athenry and Galway Bay and all that. Put them into medleys. So you see. What was happening is that people, unknown to themselves, were listening to this in the background, wherever it may be, in a hotel, and they say, "Oh, that's nice. Who's that or what's that?" Because they were sort of singing along unknown to themselves. But I mean, if I put any other type of material on my first album, it would never have made it. And I know that. Different horses, different courses. This is what I did, and it worked for me. And so just easy, recognizable material.
Yes.
Remember, most of the stuff we recorded would have been hits for singers for the last 50 or 60 years, like for Perry Como and Bing Crosby, and all that. They would have been very well known ears.
Yes, exactly. That is it. Yes, it's the material. The material is absolutely crucial, and I think it's many of the huge names in music can testify to that continually. If you take a look at Big Tom, Daniel O'Donnell, whoever you wish to think about, that's the thing. The material has got to be correct.
Well, I mean, Daniel is a typical example, and. You take Daniel, I admire for one thing. Daniel always sings the down-to-earth country, you know what I mean? He doesn't go in for the new American country, and there's nothing wrong with that by any means, but Daniel will do the stuff that people know, the Blackboard of My Heart and Jambalaya, doesn't matter what it may be, the Irish Ears, and that's what made him a superstar all over the world. You just listen to Daniel's repertoire, and everybody knows what he's going to sing.
Yes.
He's not trying to educate the people in any way. Anthony does, people can sing with it. Yeah. And that's the format. That's the formula, and I've always admired him for that.
Yes.
But it's, and another thing I always did also, Jerry, I mean, I'd be away and doing a gig somewhere, I'd be in a house or talking to someone and said, God, your album's out, Johnny. When are you recording again? I said, well, and they said, did you ever hear that song? Do you know that song or do you know that tune? And that'd be a nice one for you to do. And I'd always write it down a bit of a, like a book or something. And I'd look at that before and I'd say, well, you know, Jerry Byrne suggested that to me. I might have a go at that and try it. I'd be always looking for ideas from other people. And before I'd record an album, I would have about 50 titles that people have suggested to me. And I'd pick about 10 or 12 of them. I was always picking their brains. So I'd always listen to people and, you know, they were always right.
Indeed.
They were always right.
Indeed.
Like someone might say to me, did you ever record Somewhere Over the Rainbow? I said, no, that'd be lovely enough trouble. I'd try it. I said, you know, that's right. I might do that. So I would say the public probably picked a lot of my album tracks from me, Jerry. Right. But I always listen to their advice, though.
Indeed. It's sound, you know, it's sound advice, and you know, it's with having the ability to actually listen to people and just you know hear what people's opinions are and what they say, you know, because after all, these are the people who are listening. These are the people
they're the people that are going out to buy the records, and I never put myself ahead of them. I always took their advice, and thankfully I stayed off. You know, but I'm very very fortunate with records because with Donny and then Harmac Records and CMR Records, which would become Donny's record label, Donny marketed our albums, I mean, all over the world, literally, because he was in there with Foster and Allen already in South Africa and Canada and America and all this with Foster and Allen, who were huge stars at the time. And so he got me under the back of them, and radio stations tried to play them, and I've toured America. I've toured the world, Jerry, on the strength of my albums, to be quite honest.
That is amazing.
And, it was due to radio players that did that for me.
Tremendous success. You know, well
and
done.
I also had the pleasure of meeting quite a lot of great music. I think one of the best guys ever I had the pleasure of meeting. I wouldn't say the best, but one of the finest musicians would have been Glenn Campbell. I remember I went out to Branson to meet Glenn Campbell many years ago, and I did a few numbers on stages, and one of them I always remember would have been Amazing Grace, because apart from an amazing singer and amazing guitarist, which he played with the Beach Boys and Elvis Presley session work, he also played bagpipes, Jerry, and he was very good. So I met Glenn Campbell through a friend of mine. Her name is Sandy Gillard. Now, I was doing a concert in Cleveland, Ohio, many years ago, and Donny was at a concert also. And afterwards, this lady came up to buy a CD off me, or whatever it was at the time. And she just says, "What's your concert tonight, New Georgia?" And she knows she's buying. And she says, "My name is Sandy Gillard." And I said, "Yeah, lovely." And she says, "I'm Glenn Campbell's photographer. Glenn and I are personal friends." Oh, that's lovely. But she bought the stuff anyway. This is gospel through. And she went back, and we got 4 or 5 weeks later, I got a call from Sandy. Said, "Look, I played this for Glenn Campbell, and he likes what he, you know, and he'd love to meet you and come out to Branson with maybe I'm doing something, recording something together." Of course, I jumped at the idea. So Donny and I went out to Branson and met Glenn Campbell, stayed with him, and did a few tracks, so did a few things on stage with him. And I was very fortunate, but he was one of the greatest guys ever. But now, unfortunately, it didn't happen that we recorded together due to managerial things, I'd say, different things. But I had the great pleasure of meeting him, and then I played with Johnny Cash, and I remember Roy Orbison when he was on tour many years ago. I was on stage and played a few tunes with him when he toured, when he had Pretty Woman and them out. So I've met a lot of famous people through my trumpet, I'll tell you that, Jerry.
Yes, incredible, you know, and you know, well done on it all, Johnny. I mean, you're certainly one of those guys who's been there and done that, and you're still doing it. Well, albeit not live at the moment.
Yeah, well, you know, people ask me many times at the age I am now. So people are having two together. Your listeners are, and they're coming up with 4 on the right. Started at 13 years of age, and now, and I'm 63 years old, so they know my age. But the thing about this, that, you know, I always say this, Jerry, and I mean sincerely, I've met so many wonderful people through music in my life that I would hate to think that one day I'll have to give it all up. Because the day I stop going out and doing a few gigs, wherever they may be, in England or Ireland or America, doesn't matter where it is, and I won't meet the people that I've known for years, that'll be the saddest day of my career, I'll tell you. I've just met so wonderful, and I just get so many comments on Facebook when a record comes out or somebody sees one of my DVDs or whatever it is, and they put it up there on Facebook for you and everybody else to see, and said, "Johnny, my God, you know, I got a lovely comment there last week from a lady. I don't know, I can't think of her name now. What part things was England she was from, but somebody put up my version of Il Silenzio on YouTube." And she says, "My God, Johnny," she says, I remember you playing that in Kiltormer Hall in Ballinasloe, and such a hall." And she says, "We used to stand to listen to you play and come back with Houston Wells." And I thought that was lovely after all these years that lady was still around and she still enjoyed my music. But you know, when you hear things like that, it lifts your heart. It does for me anyway.
It does, definitely. It's absolutely phenomenal. And the mere fact like that, so many years ago that Houston Wells was at the Premier Races, you know, it's absolutely fantastic. It really is.
Yes, and they were great guys, and I suppose I thank the good Lord for that. I was very fortunate to join a band that there were only young guys starting off to being in their late teens. I was only starting my teens, but like there might be only 4 or 5 years of difference in age that time. But you know, Jerry, when you're 13 years of age and the guy's 17 or 18, he's like a big man. Like there's not that, you know, he's a grown man. But the boys were starting off, and they just took off, and it became difficult for me. We started working, and the money was handy for myself and for my parents. And, you know, I just stuck with it, and I was very fortunate to meet a group of guys as good as the Premier Races that, you know, they weren't, as I said, there was nothing wrong with the drinking, but it helped me to stay on the road with them, and allowed me to stay with them because my parents knew that I'd be taken care of. But I was very fortunate to join a band that became a huge band, and I mean a huge band for many, many years. And but then it was left up to me. It was left up to me then when I left that band to try and continue on and try and make a career out of it in my own right, which thankfully I did. And if I did, Jerry, I mean this, it was down to people like you, DJs all over the country and all over wherever they be that play the records. And I always say, without guys like you, we'd be gone long. There'd be nothing happening. And even during this lockdown now, as we call it, the music scene has been quiet for the last 5, 6, 7 months, and people are getting different way of life and getting to accept what's happening. And if they don't hear, you know, they don't hear whoever it may be on the radio, to sort of forget. And people like you and DJs all over the country are keeping those guys out there in their minds fresh, that when it comes back they will know that we're still there and come to see us. Because if it wasn't for radio, Jerry, I don't think we'd ever get a gig again. I mean that sincerely.
Thanks indeed, Johnny. We do our best, and I must say a big help on it is the fact that guys like you make music that we can play. So you know, it's a sort of a two-way street there.
Yeah, and all the boys in the business, you'll probably see there, you would know more than anybody else been in the business, all the CDs and so. Everybody's recording and trying to get stuff out again, and the musicians that are out of work now have great interest in their careers, and they're recording whatever bit they can, maybe from home, but they're getting airplays and they're keeping the name out there, and there's nobody giving up, because one day, Jerry, and hopefully it won't be very, very long in the near future, that this will pass, God willing, and we'll all be back again and touring and overtaking to see you and people like you.
Indeed.
And all over Ireland also.
Indeed. Looking forward to whenever that day is. Johnny, listen, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you.
Thank you, Jerry, and I've known you for many, many years, and I know the great job you're doing, because I would know from listening to other artists in the business, I would know most of them, and they all hold you in very high esteem and very high regard, and appreciate what you've done, what you're doing, and what you've done for us down through the years, Jerry.
Johnny, thanks a million. Listen, it really is appreciated, and listen, you know, stay safe and well.
God bless you and all your listeners.